Welcome to Hip Hop Now Podcast. If you're from the future, you know what to do. Get your ass out of here. Don't disrespect the legend. Hip hop is here to stay. Let's get right into the business. What up, y'all? I am your host, Vegas, and this is Hip Hop Now Podcast, a podcast specifically designed to keep you caught up on all things hip hop music and culture that happen throughout the week. I am your host, Vegas, and big shout out to the Patreon supporters over at patreon.com/hiphopnow. If you would like to support the podcast and have somewhat of a say in the production of the podcast and where we go from here, click the link in the description of this episode. There are very low tiers to join, from $2 to $5, which is $5 is the highest. Ain't got nothing higher than that. And then there's also free. Now, I'm going to just be real with y'all. There's nothing wrong with being on the free tier at all, but don't have the same expectations as the person at the $2, the $3, and the $5, okay? Because that money goes directly into the podcast. It doesn't go into my gas tank. It doesn't pay my mortgage. It goes directly into the podcast via promotions, via equipment when needed, whatever it may be. So again, patreon.com/hiphopnow. For those who haven't seen, or if you're new here, welcome. We are on the road to 500 subscribers on YouTube. Right now, we're close to 440. So we can make up that ground just by sharing, not only subscribing, but sharing. So when you subscribe and you say, yo, I kind of like that episode, I kind of like the content I'm seeing, I'm going to go ahead and subscribe. I'm going to go ahead and like the video. Another way to help out, even if you don't want to join the Patreon, is to share the episode you like or the episodes you like. Speaking of episodes, so I've been on a rampage because there are a lot of people who want more content, and I said more content is coming, and it is here. So in not last week, but the week before that, I did a top 5 albums of all time, top 5 MCs of all time, and top 5 beats of all time. Obviously, it's all subjective. It's my opinion. Most of it has to do with how I feel about these beats. Obviously, there's so many beats, classic hip hop beats, from Microphone Fiend to, you know what I'm saying? Just so many. I love the Benjamins beat. But I explained why I chose the 5 I did when it came to beats, when it came to albums, when it came to MCs. So again, sure, it's my personal list, but also I feel like it's a list where I can explain why these 5 of each category should be in your top 5, or at least in the top 10, or why generally it would be, in a list. So you can check out that. But also, if you're like, yeah, it's cool, the old school is cool, but what's good, what's new? I did my annual best of 2024 so far, and it's a single episode. Typically, I just use these weekly episodes to do that, but I decided, like, you know what? Why don't I just go ahead and knock this out the proper way and just make it more or less a bonus episode? So I went over about a good 19 projects, some albums, some EPs that I think are the best of 2024 so far. If I had to pick my top 5, they're in that list. And you could definitely tell which ones I'm highest on compared to the ones that I think are just dope. And I'm gonna just tell y'all now, man, this Dog Pound, I've been playing it like every day. And that doesn't mean there's not other dope stuff out, or I don't listen to things, but or other music. It's just that it's just been perfect for my mood at the moment. And those are the types of things that weigh in to my top 5 of the year at the end of the year. So we'll see. Because word on the street is Dr. Dre and Snoop dropping next month in July. So who knows? You know, it might be all Death Row, West Coast, all in my top 5. So we'll see. Big shout out to hiphopdx.com, XXL.com, Ambrosia for Heads, and a couple of places where I get these stories from. Let's get right to the business. Styles P has now laid out the plans for his final album. If you don't know, Styles P is planning to retire from hip hop, and instead of doing like just one solo joint and saying it's my last album, he has a plan to roll out 3 projects. Now, I'm not gonna hold y'all. I could have sworn he said the same thing last year, and we got a project, and I thought it was cool, but I thought it was one of the 3, and then we didn't get anything else. Now is this story again. So maybe I got it wrong, but I would, and plus the reception, not saying people were saying it was whack, just there wasn't really a lot of conversation around it. I kind of, in a lot of ways, I kind of felt like, damn, am I the only one that heard it? You know, and this was the album last year. So apparently, it's a 3-part plan for his final solo. So this is what he said. This is what he posted on Instagram. Last solo album will be a 3-part series broken up. Ghost of the Past, Ghost of the Present, Ghost of the Future. And then at the end, he put Memoirs of a Gangster and a Gentleman. Now, I don't know, because that's 4. So I guess the 3 parts, maybe he's going to do like an EP rollout for all 3. And then the final album is Memoirs of a whatever. And he says this: I believe I have run myself down a tad bit over the past few years, being a super hardworking MC and a health advocate. For one, I'm not really that great at multitasking. It's actually my drive that keeps me going, and that slack falls back on my family, business partners, and coworkers. I thought about it harder and came to the conclusion that I need to walk away from my solo career, period. I think I gave y'all enough. So for those who are wondering, he's really just talking about his solo career. So that means you'll still get Styles P on a Locks album, because if I'm not mistaken, they're signed to Rock Nation and they've released maybe 2 albums, I think, so far on that label, 1 or 2. So the solo career I get, and I ain't gonna hold y'all. Styles P has put out mad music. Like if you were like a quasi Locks fan, or you're this is pre-verses, because we know some of y'all wasn't fans and now you act like you've been Locks fans forever. Pre-verses, a lot of people really only would check for Jadakiss when he dropped something, and that started to dwindle. And some people, the heads, would check for Styles P because he was putting in a lot of work. And then people forget to check for Sheik's solos, and he dropped a lot of albums. If I had to look at Styles' career thus far as a soloist, I think it's really solid. Like, I think it's really solid. I think it's better than some people who haven't heard all his music, from the mixtapes to the albums to the collaborative EPs, like what him and Dave East, the album he had with him and Havoc. Like, Styles P has been putting in a lot of work outside of the group, the Locks. So maybe we do a tier list. We do a ranking of Styles P solo albums, because he's got a ton of them and he's got some dope mixtapes. And honestly, again, I think there's a lot of people who have no idea. And they figure, because some people do stuff like, oh, well, I ain't really hear nothing, so it's probably not that good. Yo, dog, there's way too much music out, and there's so much good music getting ignored, because you're waiting for a wave of people to talk about an album. Sometimes you just got to go digging and find it. And somebody like Styles P, you shouldn't have to dig. You know his pedigree, and trust me, if you knew the Locks and you like them, for all three artists, Kiss is a little debatable. You should go and check out their catalog because it's mostly heat. And I only say Kiss is debatable because when it comes to his albums, for the most part, you're not getting what you think you're going to get. Like you're getting one or two or three of the Jadakiss the Jadakiss you saw at Versus, and then the other ones, he's more tapping in with new talent from different regions. So, you make money that way. You go to their town, you get, ladies and gentlemen, OJ the Juice Man. He does songs with these cats. Styles P just give you bars, give you the same gangster stuff that you know from the Locks, but he also give you consciousness. He been putting in a lot of work. Even this rollout is a lot. So we'll see. I'm going to obviously put my ear to those. But if you want to see Styles P ranking, I'll definitely be down to do it because I've heard them all. So unless there's something I haven't heard, I literally heard all of his albums because I'm probably a bigger fan of him as a soloist than I am of Jadakiss and Chic. So there you have it. What do you think about Styles P? Leave your comments in the comment section below. Benny the Butcher called Lloyd Banks one of the top MCs ever. And it was in a video. I think it was like an interview or maybe just him being live or whatever. And he said, like, that's just a dude you can't mess around with when it comes to bars. Like, if you're going to be on the same song, or he just feels like he's just that crazy when it comes to I don't want to use the word catchy, but I guess like clever rhyme schemes and stuff like that. And I'll just say this to Benny the Butcher, you preaching to the choir, okay? Because I remember a time before Lloyd Banks dropped basically his trilogy of albums since I think like 2020, where he was like officially back to most people because it was albums, and they're just packed with it. Even if you don't even go back and listen to anything else he's done, and you just listen to those three albums, you'll hear exactly what Benny the Butcher is talking about. But what I wanted to say is prior to that, he was still dropping like mixtapes. The Halloween Havoc mixtape series is crazy. I think in a lot of ways, I feel like it better than the last three albums. And I didn't necessarily dislike it. I think the only thing with Lloyd Banks, uh, besides the bars, and trust me, you could be nice, but that's not the only thing that counts. Um, is he can be monotone, which is fine, but he doesn't always convey emotion, right? He can talk about something serious, right? Like these last three albums, there was a lot of, serious subject matter for him. But I couldn't tell the difference between a dude who's rapping like about that and a dude who's rapping about the streets. And he sounded, his emotion, his inflections do not change. And some people like that. And I don't mind it as much. But I think if the bars are like okay on a certain record and the beat isn't that great, then him being monotone is way more noticeable. And sometimes it's hard to shake that as a listener because you like, yo, you bored, I'm bored. You sound bored, so now I'm bored. So I said all that to say Benny the Butcher's right regardless. I used to feel like him and Fabulous they kind of approached um, their verses in the same ways as far as how they would write as opposed to what they write about, but how they put their bars together. And the difference is Fabulous, even though he can somewhat sometimes be a little monotone, he does have different inflections and he just does different types of records. So the beats sometimes can always sound really bright. When I say bright, like the energy is up, not fast, but you can have a slow beat that's kind of like raises your blood pressure a little bit, and then the bars on there and you're like, oh yeah, I like this joint. What I think I want from Lloyd Banks after getting a trilogy of albums, because I think he fulfilled the bar thing for everybody who just want that. What I really want from him now is to collaborate with somebody that I don't know, where they complement each other lyrically. Like I wouldn't want a Benny the Butcher and Lloyd Banks project, because I already know what that's gonna sound like. And them two together is not gonna it's not gonna sound any different than, if you ask me, than listening to Conway and Benny together. Um, I think what made Lloyd Banks dope was that 50 was different from him, and Yayo was different from them. You know, Young Buck was different. Like, everybody was different. You know what I'm saying? How they approached it, no matter if they were talking about the same things. So I think in a lot of ways, having that would, I don't know, kind of like extend his lyrical life at this point. Because do I want another album? Sure, of course, you know. But at the same time, I like the energy more so on the Halloween Havoc series than I did the trilogy of albums that he put out, which I think really I'm only mad on the last album. The first two were hot. I think the last one I was kind of like, well, it feels like more of the same. Whereas the Halloween Havoc joint, and I think Halloween Havoc 3 is my favorite. Halloween Havoc 4 just felt like, yeah, this is the Lloyd Banks, this is the production, this is the energy I want to hear on his project. So we'll see. I think he's energized by all of this attention and putting in work in this way. And, you know, one of the best ever. I think you could make a case for him being top 50, maybe, but we would have to make that list and see who's on it and who's not on it. Um, but it'd be difficult to leave him out. I tell you that much. And it don't mean he's 50 either. You know, the dude is nice. So there you have it. And lastly, so Common and Pete Rock have been ramping up for the release of their collaborative album. They've been hitting the interview circuit. You know, they've been on Math Hoffa podcast and have been on Drink Champs. I think I watched about 30, 45 minutes of Drink Champs, and then I was like, it's like 2 more hours ago. I can't do it. And it wasn't that I wasn't interested. It was just like, I don't know if I got enough within the time I watched to keep watching. So I'll just look for clips as they pop up from various interviews from these individuals. Um, but this is coming from hiphopdx.com. It says Common and Pete Rock announced album release date, drop new single, Dreamin. And I ain't gonna hold y'all. The first single called Wise Up that sampled The Bridges Over by MC Shan, I was like, I didn't even know I wanted this. Like, this is hip hop. You know what I'm saying? This is hip hop. The beat, the way that Pete made the beat, Common doing what he does, people pretending like, yo, he getting back to, like, I heard the later albums. He's still rhyming the same way. He just got Pete Rock on the beats. That's the difference. So to me, Common never really fell off. He just didn't make the music that you like. But now you're getting that. And Common talked, I will say this, Common talked in interviews about what inspired him. And he said during the lockdown, you know, he had a lot of time to reflect, and he was just listening to 90s hip hop like crazy. Like, that's all he was listening to. He was just going through albums, listening to it, and that energy just fueled him. And he comes from that time. You know what I'm saying? And you know, he thought to link with Pete Rock, and here we are. So the album set to be released on July 12th on streaming platforms, but also there'll be CD, vinyl, and cassette available. The album is called The Auditorium Volume 1, which is interesting because that means they probably did enough records for a volume 2 and maybe a volume 3. So we'll see. But the latest song, Dreamin', is, let me say this. Common is dope on it as usual. But I gotta say this. I tweeted it or whatever. But what Pete Rock did with that beat, with that sample, I'm just like, I don't know if Pete Rock made them joints new or he been sitting on them. But what I do know is Nas and Premier, you have something to shoot for. Now I know Nas gonna be in the pocket, but Premier, we gonna. I like what you did on the Dog Pound joint, but let's be real. It's the sound we're used to hearing from Premier, to be honest. But what Pete Rock is doing with these beats with Common, I don't know if I've even really paid that much attention to what Common's saying, because I'm like, yo, this beat is crazy. So shout out to Pete Rock for sure. Obviously, shout out to Common also. But this album is based off of the 2 songs I heard, even though I believe there was a third record that they started with that I don't believe is on the album. I did have a idea of the amount of songs on there. I saw the put it this way, the back cover is available for you to look at the number of songs and who's on there. It ain't loaded with a bunch of features from hip hop artists at all. I think Bilal is on there and maybe 2 other people. I know Pasta Noose is on there, De La Soul, or Paz or whatever y'all call them there. So I think I like that idea of let's not do what people do now, because having a bunch of features is fine with me personally, but doing that as a way to market the album, like, yo, look at all these features, you know what I'm saying? And maybe that's the reason why people aren't going too crazy about it, and it's really making you focus on Pete Rock and Common and what they did together, and it's sounding dope so far. I cannot see this not being in my top 5 of the year if the beats are going to be like this. There's one feature I wouldn't mind if they did it. Like, let's just get Common and Nas one more time on a track. You know, they had a dope track on the Dreamer Believer album, I believe. Ghetto Dreams. That was what it was called. That song was crazy. Common and Nas killed it. And I'm like, can we get another one of those? You know, but if this is volume 1, volume 2 will probably have a couple of joints. So we'll see, man. What's your excitement level for Common and Pete Rock? Have you heard Wise Up and Dreamin'? You should, because if you're a hip hop head, this is like Christmas for you, to be honest. Leave your comments in the comment section below. I answer, I read, I look at everything that's in the comment section on YouTube. We're trying to get to 500 subscribers. So if you like this episode and you're a subscriber, thank you. But also, if you like this episode and you're new, or you frequently come to the channel but you haven't subscribed, the best thing you can do is subscribe to this podcast, like this episode. It helps get the podcast noticed on YouTube to get to more hip hop heads like you. Until next time, y'all. I'm not a critic. I'm a fan. Peace.